Here's the top 20 lessons that I learned last year. And this is gonna be probably one of the most important videos I ever put out, because if I had one video that I could send back in time, I could send to my past self, it would be this video. Because in this last year, I made a lot of mistakes. I learned a lot of really valuable lessons. And by watching this video, you're gonna be able to avoid some of the mistakes I made. You're gonna be able to learn from some of the lessons that it took me a long time. And each one of these lessons, I honestly would have paid $1,000. If I could have learned it a year earlier, I easily would have paid $1,000 for. And I'm here in the Bahamas right now, and I'm spent this time reviewing my previous year, which is one of the first lessons I have, is spend time reviewing. What did you do last year? Like, look at your calendar, look at all the different things. And one thing that I do, here's another tip, is at the end of each week, I like to ask myself 3 questions. One is, what is the most important thing I did this week? The next one is, what are all the lessons I learned? And I just do freestyle writing, write out every single lesson. And then I ask myself also, how could I have made this week even better? And at the end of the year, I have a ton of data. I looked over all this different data, all this different interesting points, and I noticed certain patterns. And this is gonna be some of the patterns I've talk about here, some of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And this video is gonna be a little bit longer than normal videos. It's gonna be a lot more personal, not gonna do as much fancy editing, but I think the value is gonna be there. And one of the big things I struggled with, so first off, I had a lot of anxiety. I didn't have any depression or anything like that this last year, but I had a ton of anxiety because I'm doing the new performance nut butter cacao. There was a lot of issues that came up, and I wanna share that right out of the gate here. But one of the big things I learned early on this year was ask yourself this question. Anytime you do something and you don't want to do it, ask yourself, do I need to do this? And if the answer is no, ask yourself, do you want to do it? And if the answer is still no, then why are you doing it? I spent a lot of this year doing things that I felt like I should do, doing things that, oh, it would be the smart thing to do. And maybe, to be honest, completely honest, like maybe even performance nut butter cacao falls under this example. Though, in all honesty, I do want to do it, and I think I kind of need to do it for my business. But I spent a lot of the beginning of this year thinking that I needed to spend time working on performance nut butter when I was really excited about YouTube. Obviously, if you've watched this channel, you know that I've been talking a lot about how much fun, like I love doing the YouTube videos. I love teaching other people. I love every aspect of, making the thumbnail. And as a side note, this video, it's probably not going to do as well as most of my other videos, even though it has 10 times the value as a lot of my other videos. My other videos have the clickbait thumbnail, they have the really rapid fire content, and I'm gonna try to make this as packed with information as possible. But this was a revolutionary thing for me this last year, was realizing I don't need to do very many things. There's very few things in life you need to do. I mean, taxes is one. Maybe if there's certain like obligations that you have. Maybe if your business is about to fail, like obviously performance nut butter was dipping a little bit in sales, so it could be argued that I need to work on it, though even that, I don't technically need to. I have other sources of income, so I'm okay. But then you can ask yourself, also, do you want to do something? Because if you don't need to and you don't want to, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. And I think a good thing to ask yourself is, why are you doing things that you don't need to do and you don't want to do? And it's probably because you put probably because of society, or in my case, I put a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself. For instance, I thought, oh, I really need to have a tight email marketing funnel and start doing Facebook ads for performance nut butter, because that would be the smart thing to do. But the truth is, I really didn't need to do any of that. Another lesson that I learned is this idea of keystone habits. And there's certain habits, and I'm gonna be talking about what my keystone habits are throughout this video, but there's certain habits that if you notice during your happiest times, during your most productive times, these are things that you're probably doing. And a few of them for me are waking up early. When I wake up early, I get more done in the day. Even though if I wake up later, you could argue that it's the same number of hours. I don't know what it is, but when I get up early, I just have more fire, more energy. So that's one thing for me, waking up early. Another thing is exercise. And this is a repeating pattern in my life, is when I get more exercise, I'm less anxious, I'm more productive, I feel better, I'm happier, every single thing. And it's one of those things, I spent the first part of my life doing a lot of exercise. I think, up until my early 20s, I was in the gym 6 days a week. And then I these last few years, not that I haven't been exercising, but I didn't exercise with as much intensity as I used to. And the truth is, that was kind of not the best thing, because I found that I would be more anxious. The exercise allowed me to work off some of that anxiety. Some of the other keystone habits I had are things like reviewing and planning. And this is a big thing. A lot of people I see, a lot of new entrepreneurs, they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're they're always trying to do all these different random things, but they don't have a bigger strategy, a bigger plan. Another related keystone habit for me, and this is really a keystone habit, supposed to be like the one thing or the two things that you do that lead to that make everything else fall in place. And in that case, for me, it is waking up early. The next thing might be meditation and exercise. If I get those three things done early in the day, everything else just works out. But related to that is planning. Every week at the beginning of the week, planning. What am I gonna do? And then maybe every few weeks, taking some time and saying, okay, what am I gonna do in these next 3 weeks? And I call this a sprint. And I think this came from my corporate world experience. You'd have things called like 3-week sprints, and you'd have a bunch of projects, you'd do a sprint and try to cross them all off. And what I find personally is this last year, the pattern that I found that led to the most success was doing a 3-week sprint, having a set number of things that need to get done within those 3 weeks. And then after those 3 weeks, taking a week off, taking a week to do reflection, to go on vacation, to have fun, to reward myself, but also to take time to look at the previous 3 weeks. And there's something human, like just really deeply invigorating about having a set time frame of what you need to get done. So an example of this is these last 3 weeks before this trip right now to the Bahamas, I told myself I wanted to film 12 videos. So I decided I'm gonna film 12 videos in 3 weeks. I was also working on performance and uploader a little bit, getting the cacao ready, but it was very, very on other people's schedule, because people would send me an email and I would respond to them, and they might take 3 days before they respond back to me. So I wasn't actively working on performance and uploader that much. And so what I found is by having 3 weeks to film 12 videos, by giving myself that artificial deadline, the first week, I just came off of vacation, I just came off the Christmas break, I had a ton of energy and I filmed a few videos. The second week, I dipped a little bit, I got a little sidetracked, I worked a little bit more on some random performance and uploader things and some other random things like that. But this last week, right before vacation, I filmed 8 videos. And it's because I had this deadline that before I left for the Bahamas, I wanted to get done a certain amount of things that I was able to get more done in those 3 weeks than I normally would in 4, 5, 6 weeks. And what I find is, if I have unlimited time to get something done, I start adding in other little tasks that I need to do, that I quote unquote need to do, that I feel like I should do. But when you have a set time frame, you only focus on what is quote unquote important. And so another one of the biggest tips, and this is one of those things, it took me 31 years, I'm 31 as of November of last year. It took me about 30 years though to figure this out. And this is probably the most impactful thing that I've wanted to incorporate in my other videos, but it's kind of hard to incorporate because it's very specific and almost philosophical. And it's this idea of let the scavengers have the scraps, let the hyenas have the scraps. And let me explain to you what exactly this means, because I know that's kind of airy-fairy, like what's going on here. And what I mean by this is, you should be a lion. Like, you should be the lion going out and hunting and killing big prey. Go hunt and kill a buffalo. For me, that hunting and killing is launching new products, which is another one of the lessons I learned this last year. Is I really enjoy launching new things. I hate the idea of grinding, trying to get that 3, 4, 5% increase in sales. What I like is really like spending a ton of energy and having one big launch. And I did this with performance and uploader. I did this with my course this last year, and I'm planning on doing this with cacao. But once I launch cacao, I'm not gonna try to, I might do a little bit of Facebook ads things, a little bit of those kind of things, but even that's like a miniature launch, because it's going from a 0 Facebook ads to a 1 in Facebook ads. It's like a huge leap forward. And so for me, I found that that's what I specialize in, because I like planning, I like strategizing. Figure out what that is for you. Some people like the daily grind. I don't like the grind. I like having that black and white moment of success. Anyways, going back to let the scavengers have the scraps. So the idea behind this is basically your job, in my case, my job is to go out and launch new products, do really big revolutionary things. Now, to do things like that, people are gonna want the scraps. So I go out, kill a buffalo, which for me would be launching performance uploader cacao. My co-packer in this case was the scavenger, trying to take all the scraps. What I mean by this is, in the launching of performance uploader cacao, he was constantly charging me all these little fees, and I'd go crazy. It'd be like a $600 fee to do something that I want to do, and it felt unjust. It felt like I was being robbed in a lot of ways, and I'd spend days, like days where I was barely getting any sleep and thinking about how I feel cheated. Instead of just saying, you know what, here you go, have the scraps, it's not that big of a deal. And obviously to everyone, money is gonna mean something different to everybody. But my entire life growing up, money was this thing that was almost scary. And an example of this, even a smaller example of this, would be if I go to a restaurant and the bill comes and it's a few dollars more than I thought it should be, I would sit and I'd get frustrated and I might argue with, or like a taxi driver. Actually, here's an even better example. In the Bahamas, we take a taxi ride and I thought it should be $35 and we get there and the guy's like, it should be $45. Now, don't get me wrong. If I feel like I'm totally getting robbed, I'm gonna go back and forth with him for a little bit, but I'm not gonna spend 30 minutes sitting there arguing with him. I'm not gonna let it ruin the rest of my night. And the idea behind this is in this case, he's the scavenger. He's trying to take the little bits and pieces, but you shouldn't let that bother you. You should focus on the big things. So again, for me, my business is a big thing. I'm gonna spend a lot of energy, a lot of time going after that, hunting that prey. And then, you know what? If I have to spend a little bit of money to get that goal, it's kind of like if a lion goes out and kills a buffalo, he eats as much as he wants, and then all the little scraps, all the extra meat on the bone, he lets the hyenas have that. He's not gonna sit there and guard the carcass and try to be greedy with every last little bit. That's not a smart strategy. A smarter strategy for him is to eat as much as he wants, go relax, go play, go have fun, rejuvenate, sleep, and then go hunt and kill the next buffalo. And this is something that I did not do. I would freak out over trying to save, penny pinch every last little bit. And it took a lot of energy from me this last year. And this came up, basically, I was on a retreat. Another example of, I went on a retreat with some of my friends. We went to Yosemite, we were hiking, and we were listening to the Lion King song. Funny enough, we were in this valley. It was really beautiful. We were listening to the Lion King song, which, that's another thing I'll talk about. The Lion King has been this movie in this last year that's had a lot of personal significance to me. And part of this is, and I might do a video on this, is if you guys are interested, is Jungian psychology and archetypes. And this is a really complex subject, but basically the idea behind archetypes are all humans have these things deep in our subconscious that we try to fit, almost like mental models. And some of these archetypes would be things like a hero. All societies have heroes. All humans can identify what a hero is. A warrior, a king, a magician. Like all societies, even though they never had contact with each other, they have this concept of what this is. And what's even more interesting about this is there's the idea of the hero's journey. So, and I've talked about this in my other videos as well, and if you pay attention, you might notice this, but every single society has stories that describes the hero's journey. And what is the hero's journey? The hero's journey is basically where there's an individual that is called to some kind of adventure and at first refuses it, but eventually goes on the adventure and they change as a person. And really what the hero's journey is it's about a boy becoming a man. It's about entering adulthood, because as boys, and I'm sure the same is applicable to women as well, but as boys, we follow society. We listen to what everyone else tells us to do, but at a certain point, there comes this point where you have to basically say, you know what, society, I think you're wrong. I think that there's something else out there for me. And for most of the people watching this channel, this is probably entrepreneurship. Your entire life, society's told you, get a corporate job, do all this, go to college, blah, blah, blah. And then you see this opportunity that is the corporate world, and it's freaking scary. And I've talked about it before, but when I quit my job, it was the hardest time of my life. I was filled with anxiety. I was filled with all kinds of unsureness in myself. And that was, for instance, for me, my hero's journey. It's been the process, and I don't want to say of becoming a man because that sounds so goofy, but it's really of learning to listen to myself. And I highly recommend for anyone watching this, especially if you haven't yet started entrepreneurship, go find out about the hero's journey. Go do some research. And I firmly believe that to make any big change in your life, you need to go through this process of the quote unquote hero's journey. Because basically what it is, it's how you change, because you don't want to change. Like, I'll tell you this from a deep down level, you think you want to change, but you really don't. And going on the hero's journey, it allows you to change your opinions deeply. And one of my big opinions was this whole idea of, I put money on a pedestal for my entire life. I always thought money was the solution to everything, and I would try to scrimp and save every last penny. What I realized though is money is, and it sounds so cliche, but money is just a freaking tool, right? And another one of these lessons, just to kind of add another element to the story, is earlier this year, I showed a video where I basically talked about my time at a yoga retreat. And at the yoga retreat, they had this thing called inner dance. And inner dance is basically just laying on the ground, listening to music for an hour and a half. And you can meditate, you can do whatever you want, but it's like really just like relaxing and listening to the music. And during this time, this is one of my other lessons, is do things like that. So a sound bath is another example. A float tank, I did float tanks. And what I found is throughout periods when I had anxiety, when I had things that I was unsure about, I was trying to like calculate in my brain, if I would go do a float tank, go do maybe yin yoga, or just lay on the ground and just listen to music for an hour and a half, all the different issues that I had bubbling up in my head, they would all get solved. And I ended up when I was in the Philippines at this yoga retreat, I ended up hiring the guy. His name's Pi. I hired him for a private one-on-one session. It was $70, which depending on who you are, either sounds like a lot of money or it's really cheap and really a good deal. And this guy, probably the closest to a quote unquote enlightened person. He wouldn't consider, maybe he would consider himself enlightened, but like the most yogi spiritual person I've ever come in contact with. So I did this private session with him, and $70 is a lot of money to me. You know, a few years ago, there's no way I would have spent that. But again, my relationship to money has changed, where I'm like, all right, if I get one thing out of this $70 session, then it's worth it. And I did. And during the session, I'm laying there listening to music, and he's basically, you know, doing like energy healing on me, and he's pushing on all these different spots on my body, and it's really weird. Like, unless you've experienced something like this, it's hard to fully explain. But the Lion King song came on, and it's this whole idea about the circle of life. And I'll be honest, like a tear came to my eye, and I had this feeling of, basically for the last 7 years, since I quit my corporate job, for the last 6-7 years, I'd been struggling. And not so much financially struggling as I've been working hard, I've been stressing, I've been trying to, you know, money's been this thing, it's been this dragon that's been terrorizing me, going back to the hero's journey. That was my dragon. And that's why you'll hear me in some of my videos talk about slaying the money dragon. Money has been this dragon that's terrorized my mind. It's terrorized the village that I grew up in. My dad growing up, I really felt like when we'd go out to restaurants, and I've talked about this too before, there was one side of the menu we could order from. That was like the sandwiches, maybe the pastas, maybe the chicken dishes, but the steak and seafood, if we were to order something like that, I could see the pain in his face, and I could see that there was almost this fear around money. So my thing, I think deeply in my subconscious, was to go out and kill this dragon. And the way I slay the money dragon, is basically by making enough money, by making passive income, that I never have to worry about money again. And I did that. But it wasn't until this private one-on-one session with this guy Pi that it really, like, I felt it deep in my soul. And like, you know, he'd push on all these different spots. I don't care, you know, a few years ago I would not have believed in that your body holds all these different emotions, but when you experience something like that and you feel like tension in your shoulders and someone pushes on it at the right moment and releases it, you're like, whoa. And you feel this rush of, maybe it's a blood flow, maybe it's energy, or whatever you want to call it. And when I say energy, blood does carry glucose, which is a type of energy. Your nervous system has electrical synapses basically, and it shoots energy throughout your body. So it doesn't have to be this weird airy-fairy thing. Anyways, this song came on, and it was the Lion King song. It was about the circle of life, and I had this realization of, I have been struggling for these last few years, basically farming, basically planting my seeds of my garden, and I don't have to struggle anymore. It's time to harvest. It's time to reap the rewards that I've been sowing for years and years. And like I said, a tear came to my eye, and it just was this, and it was like this release like came out, and it was this feeling of just total abundance, and realizing that I never have to struggle again. Like this whole idea of having to struggle, like, don't get me wrong, if something happens to my business, I mean, something could potentially still happen to my business. I don't know, obviously, right? But if something were to happen to my business, it's this deep inner feeling of knowing that I have the skills to be able to go out and do it again, to start another business. And that's something I think that's very important for you out there, is realizing that the real journey isn't about the money. It's about learning the skills and becoming that better person that deserves the money and that can get the money on command. If someone deleted all my accounts, if everything went to zero tomorrow, it would suck. Don't get me wrong, but I have 100% faith that I could go out and do it again. I've done it. I've done it multiple times, and if you're watching this video, you're going to do this again and again. So anyways, fast forwarding to my Yosemite trip, I was laying on the grass, and during this time I had a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety about my co-packer, because they kept charging me all these, there kept being extra fees, and it was just, It felt like someone was biting like little bits and chunks of my flesh and just stealing from me, and I let it really upset me. And then we're laying on the grass doing this whole entrepreneur retreat thing, and the Lion King song came on, and I had this like mystical experience. And I'm not going to get into too much details, but it was a very shamanic type entrepreneur. It was a bunch of entrepreneurs. We got together, a bunch of my friends that have been in these other videos that I've done as well. And I don't want to get into the details for the purpose of this video, but I had a very crazy experience. In my entire life, I've had not my entire life, but most of my adult life, I've had shoulder issues on my right shoulder, and specifically my right pec. And the reason for this is, growing up, I did a lot of bench press, a lot of working out. I'm right-handed, and so when I'm pushing a heavy load, I would use my right pec muscle, and I used to bench press a lot. When I was 16 years old, I set a bench press record at my high school and did 325 pounds for like the entire high school, a bench press record at 16. Most other people on the team were 18, 19 that I was competing against, but I was freaking 16. So as you can imagine, I started to rely a lot on my right pec, my right shoulder. And again, you don't have to believe any of this stuff, but one thing I've noticed is, when I'm in a more analytical mindset, when I'm in the more masculine mindset and really trying to push hard, which makes sense. Like, I train my brain, when it's time to really push hard, use that right pec muscle, engage it and squeeze. And so what I found is, in business, in work, in my work life, even if I'm sitting on a computer, I'll like start tensing that muscle when I'm really trying to push. Like, instead of, here's another one of my lessons, go with the flow. And I'll talk about this in a future video if you want, or I'll talk about it more later in this video. But whenever you can, try to go with the flow. Try not to push so much. Like, think about it, if you're going down a river, if you're the person that's trying to paddle against the river, that's just so much freaking extra work, and it's probably not worth it. The smarter thing, and I'm not saying to be totally lazy either, you shouldn't just lay back on your raft and let the river take you wherever you want, but go with the flow and kind of move it in the right direction, so go down the right path. So anyways, I've had this injury on my right shoulder for a long time, laying down, listening to the Lion King song, and it's all about the circle of life. And I had this feeling of my right pec, my right shoulder open up, and it was like, when I closed my eyes, I could like feel energy just shooting out of it. And again, like I talked about, I don't really care, how hippy dippy you want to go into the whole energy thing, but it felt like energy was flowing there for the first time, and it was like radiating out into the world. And I had this feeling of fullness and just power in a very healthy way, not like a power in like a sadistic way or whatever, like in a greedy way. It was this feeling of like, I can do anything. And on top of that, I have so much power, so much energy, that I can give my power to, like, other people can feed off my power. So for instance, my co-packer, who's been, in my opinion, like taking all these little fees, it's okay. It was this feeling of abundance. Like, I have so much to give, so much love, energy, whatever you want to call it, to give, that go ahead, take the fees. It doesn't even bother me. Like, I've got extra. It almost felt like, it's gonna sound weird, but it almost felt like all these different scavengers were feeding off this energy that was flowing out of me. And that's because of the Lion King song. I started thinking about this. In the Lion King, if you break this down, watch some Jordan Peterson. I'll try to link a video down below with Jordan Peterson breaking down the Lion King. And it's all movies, but especially these kind of movies that are very archetypal is about our own brain and how we perceive the world. And all of us inside of us have what's called the good king, or the shadow king, or the evil king. And the good king is that guy that's like abundance and very positive, and it's like, hey, there's enough for everybody, that powerful person that can make decisions. And then there's the shadow king, which is Scar in the Lion King, who's all about greed, and he always wants more. And what I find, and you see this in the movie, is, so in the movie, if you don't give the hyenas enough, they rebel. They end up taking over. They attack the lions. They want to, they rebel. They want more and more. And the same's true, I fully believe, in your own brain. If you have this feeling of so if you starve out and you're constantly trying to be greedy and penny pinch and say no, so like, you're arguing with the taxi driver, you're arguing with your waiter because it's a few dollars extra. And obviously there's times where you're right, but there's times where it's kind of ambiguous, and it's like, is it really worth 30 minutes of your time to argue with a waiter? And what I find is, if you're trying to starve out all these quote unquote hyenas, it ends up biting you in the butt. They take over your mindset, and you end up becoming greedier, and you end up like hoarding. Think of like a dragon. They end up hoarding all their cash, hoarding all the gold, instead of just saying, letting the money flow naturally. And so I had this idea of, basically letting the scavengers have the scraps. So it's okay because I want to keep them happy. So a perfect example of this is my co-packer. If every single fee he tried to charge me, I argued with tooth and nail, he'd end up hating me. He'd end up not wanting to work with me. He'd probably end up saying, you know what, go find someone else. And that would end up being way worse for me than just paying $600. Now, I'm not saying to let people take advantage of you by any means, but what I am saying is ask yourself, is this like a scavenger that you just need to feed a bone to? And what's really interesting, and again, you know, take what you want from this, I find myself when now my co-packer tries to get an extra fee from me, I can tell when I'm fighting it and my right pec will like tense up and it'll become painful. And when I notice that, it's a cue for my brain to say, hey, relax, let him have it. Assuming that it's not just like total robbery. And this is one of the other lessons I've learned, is to listen to my body. And there's multiple different things about this. And one important aspect is I honestly believe you should give yourself maybe an hour, 2, 3, 4 hours every week to just go to the gym and stretch and really listen to your body and love it. And like that'll be another lesson I'll talk about in a second, is love yourself. And that sounds so hippy dippy, I know, but so let's talk about the listening to your body thing. So one thing I found, and I would not have believed this a few years ago, but like I said about my pec, when it acts up, I know that I'm trying to push too hard. My left hip, especially when I get frustrated with Ariana and like her feminine energy and all that kind of different stuff, my left hip starts to bother me. Like when she does something, for instance, she was cooking something and she burned some like I had a little bit of cookie dough left or whatever, and she was making some cookies and she burned them, and it really frustrated me because she didn't set a timer. Like I'm very much like, set a timer, follow the ingredients, follow the recipe, which is a very masculine mindset, where she's very much like, well, I feel like it should go in for this long and whatever. And I felt myself getting really frustrated with her, and I've had left hip issues. And if you look into kind of basically how your body is, so your left side's supposed to be your feminine side and your right side's supposed to be your masculine side, which makes sense because your right side's like my right side's dominant and my left side's more passive, more flowy, and I don't want to go into all the different parts of this, but it's crazy. I noticed that my left hip acts up every time I get frustrated at her. And it also is within my own self. Like when I want to beat myself up, beat my own femininity, and all men have, you know, femininity and masculinity. And for me, it's like when I want to go with the flow, but my masculine part of my brain, I guess it would be this side, my masculine part of my brain basically says, no, like we set a plan, we're gonna stick with it, and I kind of force myself to do it. That's when things go bad and my left hip starts to hurt. And so this is also go with the flow, and it's also with this whole idea of love yourself, which is, again, super hippy dippy. And let me explain what I mean by this, because I've heard so many people explain this so poorly. Ask yourself, like anytime you're doing something, ask yourself, if I absolutely love myself, would I be doing this? Or what would I do in this situation? And maybe even like the tool that I use is asking myself, if a child that, like my child, I don't have a child, but if I had a child and I absolutely love them unconditionally and they said, you know, Dad, do I really need to do this? What would I say? And so an example of this would be, there's some days where I wake up and I dread working. I absolutely do not want to do any work. And all I want to do is go outside, go to the beach, or maybe go to the gym, work out or something. And when I'm absolutely dreading it, I say, what would I say to this little kid that wants to just go out and have fun and play? And the answer is, it depends. Sometimes there's things that need to get done. Sometimes it's like I've got a big deadline the next day, and if it was a kid in this situation that had homework, that had a project due the next day, I'd say, hey, sorry, you can't go play. You got to get this done. Like, this is your responsibility. But the truth is, a huge percentage of the time for me, I don't need to. I'm a pretty hard worker. I work, even though on these videos I go to the beach and do all that kind of stuff all the time, I work pretty hard. I hold myself to pretty high standards. And what I found is that when I ask myself that, a lot of times, you know, if there was this kid that I absolutely unconditionally loved, I would tell him, enjoy yourself. Like, for instance, if they had homework that it was Monday night and they had homework that wasn't due till Friday night, I would say, like, son, go out and play, have fun, love yourself, like love your life. And so that's what I mean by that. Like, treat yourself the way you would treat someone that you love unconditionally, that you're not trying to torture. I find that in my life, I torture myself a lot. I find that there's a lot of times where I hold myself to this certain standard and I crack the whip and I say, no, you got to go get this done. Why? I don't even know. Like, there's times where another thing, I don't know if I added this as one of my top lessons. I spent a disproportionate amount of my time last year comparing myself to other people, other YouTubers, other business owners, you know, and I guess another related thing to that is I cared way too much what other people thought of me. There was one guy that I considered somewhat of a mentor who basically told me, stop focusing on YouTube, focus 100% of your energy on performance nut butter. And he basically was saying, you're not making enough with performance nut butter. You're not like a legitimate enough resource to be teaching this kind of stuff. He didn't say that exactly, but that's kind of how I interpreted it, which is freaking crazy. I've made almost $300,000 profit with performance nut butter. I'm making $100,000 a year passive freaking income where I can enjoy my life, where I can enjoy everything that I'm doing. That's enough money to teach other people. Like if I can get other people 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I quit my corporate job, if someone told me I'm making 100K while laying on the beach or enjoying my life, I would say, holy cow, teach me how to do it. Now, there's some people out there that they don't think that's enough, but that's cool. My course, my YouTube videos, they're not for them. They're for the people that are starting out or earlier on. Honestly, if you're making six figures, you probably aren't gonna learn a lot from my YouTube videos, but if you're brand new, man, there's probably a lot of things that you can do. Another lesson, and I'm jumping all over the place, another lesson that I learned this last year was done is better than perfect. And you've heard me talk about this in other of my videos, and I'll link a video up here and down below where I talk about this in a little bit more depth. But I spent a year basically trying to get performance nut butter cacao perfect. But you know what? What would have been better than perfect is done. Because if a year ago I would have finished performance nut butter cacao, the product's probably gonna make about $10,000 profit every single month. If I would have launched it a year ago, I would have made $120,000 profit. Let's say I would have launched it a year ago and I would have made a huge mistake. I would have had to thrown away an entire production run worth of inventory, but I would have iterated and I would have made it better. Then I still would have made, and let's say a few months later I would have launched it, I still would have made $90,000 or $60,000. So right now, I've been so worried about the performance nut butter cacao recipe. But the truth is, when I launch it, I'm gonna get the feedback because I'm not adding sugar to it, I'm not adding sweetener to it. I'm gonna launch it and see what people think. And if people say, this is disgusting and it only gets 3.5 stars and it's not selling well, then you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna add monk fruit to it or some other kind of sweetener, and I'm gonna relaunch it. And the truth is, even if people do like the one without the sweetener or without the sugar, I can still do a second one where I add monk fruit to it. I can do like a more private label, not private label brand, a different labeled brand. It's still gonna be a passion product because I still believe in it. I'm not a big fan of sweetener or sugar, but you know what? It's not all 100% about me. It's also about my customers. Now, I am gonna use, if I were to use a sweetener, I'd probably use a monk fruit because that of all the different sweeteners is probably the one that I believe in the most. But this is, if you only got one thing from this video, freaking launch your product, launch whatever you're gonna do. And obviously I've talked about some productivity hacks to do that. Organize your life in sprints, and that's why I like the 3-week sprint. I get a ton of stuff done. I give myself a week break. Here's the truth. I made enough money in this last year. I made a lot of money in this last year. I've talked about in other videos how much I made. I don't need to do things for the money anymore. I need to do things because I enjoy them. Another element I wanna add to this is my biggest failures over and over again have led to my biggest successes. So if I were to launch performance nut butter cacao and it became a failure, it would probably lead to a bigger success because my next product would be even better. Another failure of mine was my corporate job. I got depressed. I didn't quit as early as I would have liked to, but because I didn't quit right away, it led to me having no questions. Like once I finally quit, I had this depression. That was like probably the biggest failure of my life, was this major depression, but it led to me having the courage to be able to quit and go do something I believed in. Pretty much everything over and over again. Here's a funny story. I'll just tell this because I don't think I've ever told this story before. But early on with YouTube, I didn't monetize any of my videos because I thought that people, if they saw ads, they weren't going to want to watch my videos or whatever. And then one day, YouTube basically said, you're not allowed to put links in your videos. And the only way I was making money at the time was off of affiliate commission. And YouTube basically said, you're not allowed to put links in your videos unless you monetize. But here's the thing, when I was 12 years old, I had an AdSense account and I did some like goofy 12-year-old things, and I basically tried to trick it into making more money, and I had someone do some like clicks, and so basically AdSense banned me for life. So when I found out that I was no longer allowed to put links in my videos, I freaked out because all of a sudden I realized that now I'm not gonna be able to make money off YouTube. This years that I probably spent 1 or 2 years, all these years I put into my YouTube channel are just disappeared. But because of this failure, because of this whole idea of thinking that my YouTube channel was gone forever, I spent a lot of energy and time trying to figure out a way around it. And I found a way around it. I was able to end up opening up another AdSense account, and I do monetize my videos. And last month, I made about $10,000 off of ad revenue alone. And I would not have, that wouldn't have been, I've made over $40,000 off of ad revenue to date. And now it's at $10,000 a month or so average, which means in the next year I might make $120,000. And if it was never for that failure, I was in so much freaking fear because I thought that, oh no, this is the end, my YouTube channel is dead. And this happens over and over again in my life, is every time I think to myself, like this is the end. Another example of this is my co-packer, my first co-packer, basically said we're gonna jack up the price, we're gonna raise it by 5x. What that forced me to do is it forced me to launch start working on performance nut butter cacao, because and it forced me to find a new co-packer, because I realized that I'm not going to be able to work with this co-packer anymore, which means that I had to find a new co-packer. And this new co-packer, he actually is a lot more legitimate. It seems like he actually knows what he's doing. So that's another one of the, let's go over some of the other ones. I enjoy YouTube. This is another lesson for me. I really enjoy YouTube, so just do it. And this is a pattern. I had a lot of guilt this year, which is another side tangent. Guilt is such a useless emotion. I mean, it can have some uses at times, but for the most part, ask yourself, why am I feeling guilty? Why do I feel guilt about doing something that I want to do, that I love to do? And I felt a lot of guilt. As I mentioned, I had a mentor who was basically, I don't know, he wouldn't consider himself a mentor to me, but I considered him a bit of a mentor, who made me feel guilty for, and it's not his fault, it's my fault, but he made me feel guilty for wanting to pursue YouTube as much as I did. Basically, he was saying the whole idea of you're not making enough money, or you're not doing well enough with performance nut butter. And I felt guilty. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. And I felt guilty spending my time on the YouTube channel, but that was so freaking silly. Spending the time on the YouTube channel is by far the best thing I ever did. And it just comes back to this idea, do what excites you, do what you love to do. And I firmly believe that when something really excites you, when you're really passionate about something, it's your subconscious, it's the universe, it's maybe, God, if you believe in God, whatever you want to believe in, it's something deep down telling you there's something big here. And I think Jungian psychology, Jordan Peterson talks about this in his videos, as well as the guy from the Hero's Journey, the guy that coined the Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell. They're very different people. They have very different beliefs. Joseph Campbell's much more about follow your bliss, and Jordan Campbell's much more about responsibility, like do what you're supposed to do. Highly recommend watching videos about both of them. I'll link some down below, some of my favorite ones. But both of them say the same thing. When something excites you, Jordan Peterson does it from much more of like an evolutionary perspective. He says basically it's your subconscious. Your subconscious is checking all these little boxes. And so when something excites you, it's your deep down part of your brain, the subconscious saying, do this, there's gonna be a big reward here. Joseph Campbell, on the other hand, has much more of like, it's the universe. Like when something excites you, it's the entire universe telling you to do something. And there's another book, I'm blanking on the name, but I'll link it down below, a book, and it'll come to me as I'm talking, where they basically talk about this, where when you have a goal, when you have something that you're passionate about, something that excites you, the entire universe opens up. The entire universe, I think it conspires to help you achieve your dreams. And if you remember what book that is, link it down below. I know it right off the top. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but that's another lesson that I learned. Another thing on top of this is learn from others. If you're watching this video right now, you are smarter than I am. I spent the first 4 or 5 years of my entrepreneurial journey trying to do everything myself, trying to figure everything out myself. Don't do that. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, subscribe to my channel, and watch these videos, because I share like deep down things that I've learned. I've spent a lot of energy learning, and you should do the same thing. And obviously get a mentor. I'm not gonna plug my course too much, but if you wanna join the course, remember it's free as long as you complete it. You get me as a mentor. And the reason I'm doing that obviously is because I've tried to help a lot of people out for free, and so many freaking people that I've tried to help out for free end up quitting. So the deposit is basically a way to make sure that you're actually committed. And the truth is, that's another thing, I don't know if I put this in my notes, another lesson, I enjoy responsibility. I enjoy working hard, and this next year, I'm really gonna double down on this course. It's not even a course, it's more than a course. It's like an academy or a group setting, and I'm gonna be spending a lot more of my energy focused on those people, because those are the people that are committed to change. And on top of that, I'm gonna be adding a lot of bonuses, adding a lot of extra things that I'm not gonna even advertise, because I want people after they join to be excited and be like, wow, that was such an amazing deal. So I'll talk I have a few more quick rapid fire lessons. indecision was a big thing that plagued me, and indecision and anxiety kind of go hand in hand. And so I learned some valuable ways of working with indecision. And at some point in your entrepreneurial career, you're gonna be stuck between two paths. And the truth is, if you spend a day or two thinking about, should I go left or should I go right down this path, chances are it doesn't matter. Chances are, because any decision that's that close, make one decision. Remember, done is better than perfect. Learn from it, and then go down the other path. Most of these aren't gonna result on you like living on the streets. They're not gonna result in you being murdered or in poverty. And I think our brain, for some reason, thinks that if we take the right or take the wrong turn, we're gonna die. And you know what? 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, that might have been the case. It's not the case anymore. And here's one other side tangent as well. You're live in abundance. Right now, you're living at the best time in freaking human history. Think about, and if you're not happy right now and you're not satisfied and grateful for what you have, nothing you do, nothing you get is gonna change that. Because right now you're living a life that 10,000 years ago would seem like freaking heaven. You have water. People used to struggle, people used to die because they didn't have access to water. You have access to clean water at the turn of a faucet. You have access, you go to a supermarket and you have anything and everything you want, and chances are if you're watching this video, you can probably afford, and maybe it's a tiny bit out of your budget, but you can probably afford to buy anything, exotic things from all over the world. You can eat yourself to death. That's our biggest problem in this society, is that we have to portion control. More people die from overeating than undereating in America, and probably, I don't know where you are. I'm assuming it's in America or wherever you are. There's probably more people dying from eating too much than not enough. Every single major concern has been taken care of. So to think that once you get money, that this next step is gonna solve everything, it's not. You already have freaking everything. You're already living in abundance, and you need to you need to learn to be grateful. And this is something that I've struggled with a lot. And I'm not saying this from a preachy standpoint. Part of the reason I made this video is, for me, I'm gonna watch this 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and kind of learn, because I just spent this week having a blast here at the Atlantis Hotel in the Bahamas, which I think I mentioned. Ariana won this. She was in the audience for the Ellen show. She won a stay here, and I think I'm a little bit more clear-headed, and that's why I recommend taking vacations, because you take a vacation and you get perspective on what actually matters in life. And man, I had a blast. And it wasn't all, like, the first few days I had to adjust because my mind was still racing. I still had all the little minor anxieties, but after a few days of letting go, and I'm in this stage now where I'm a lot happier. So part of the reason I'm making this video is for me to go back and watch it. But I also want to point out something else that was really important that I learned this last year. Life can't be constant pleasure. I think we as humans have this idea that once I do X, Y, and Z, I'm just gonna lay on a beach every single day for the rest of my life and sip a mojito or a margarita or whatever you drink. And it can't be like that. So one thing I experimented with this year is, so something I learned, that I relearned, that I love, actually, let me start there, is I woke up one Saturday and I made myself a bowl of oatmeal, put some cinnamon in it, some berries, had a protein shake, and I was just laying in bed eating this warm bowl of oatmeal and watching YouTube videos, but specifically educational YouTube videos. And I was watching some YouTube videos about, and I'll link these down below as well, about Jungian archetypes, the persona, because this is something that's been very interesting to me lately. It's really transformed the way I look at my life, this whole hero's journey, because I realized that I've been on this hero's journey and every single step of the hero's journey has been applicable to my life. So for instance, the call to adventure, I read the 4-hour work week, the refusal to call, I said, no, I'm gonna keep my corporate job out of greed. I wanted to keep making more money because it was so easy. And then there is the meeting with the mentor, or the supernatural aid, they call it. For me, that was depression. Because of my depression, it forced me to quit my job. The next step is entering the threshold, which means, or entering the special world. And in every hero story, it's like that moment where they enter this new world. In the Matrix, it's when Neo enters the Matrix. And or I guess technically it's when he unplugs. Yeah. But in Star Wars, it's when he leaves his home planet. In Harry Potter, it's when he goes to Hogwarts. You see, like, these patterns repeat themselves. There's a reason why that we love these stories. Every single blockbuster movie out there follows this hero's journey. Anyways, I was watching all this different Jungian psychology stuff, and it made me very apparent. So that some other stages, really quick, actually, I'll go back. Test enemies and allies. I have these stages. There's eventually slaying the dragon. That's why I talk about slaying the money dragon. And then there's also returning back home with the prize or the goblets, or there's usually the dragon's guarding some kind of treasure. You slay the dragon, you take the treasure back, and oftentimes you realize the treasure is something different than what you thought. I thought the goal for me was to make $300 a day passive income. What I really realized was the goal for me is to have a company, a product that I'm passionate about, to do work that I'm passionate about. That's actually how I came up with the passion product. So I really thought about, like, what is the deeper reason why I'm doing this? It's not about the money. Yeah, when I first quit my job, I thought I just want to make $300 a day passive income. But what I really realized is, sure, I want to make $300 a day passive income, but I want to have purpose in life. I want to have meaning in my life. And so kind of going full circle back to what I was saying, in this last year, I kind of realized that, and I had this experience of eating oatmeal and just really enjoying my life, just watching all these YouTube videos. And so I thought, why am I working so hard? So I ended up spending a week straight where I just ate oatmeal every day in the morning and would watch these YouTube videos and watch these different educational things, which is something I used to do a lot. I used to I used to watch a lot of like educational content, documentaries, like all that kind of different things. And a side note, the teaching channel, not the teaching channel, the teaching company, they have basically courses that you can take from top level professors. And there's also a lot of really great YouTube videos where you can basically get a college level education. And that's something I used to do when I was in college for fun, and I've kind of forgot about that. And so anyways, I spent a week basically every day where I'd have oatmeal and watch these videos. And for the first day or two, it was fun, but it quickly got boring and I felt sluggish and I felt gross and I just hated it. And I came to this realization, life cannot be constant pleasure. It's like exercising a muscle. You can't just constantly relax. You need to strengthen the muscle to be able to relax it. Because if you ever try just relaxing, it's actually more powerful if you get a workout in and then you relax. And then it's like you can breathe again. And one of the ways I saw this is, and I've seen this for the last few years, but my family has a dog, and I noticed that he's got this like low-level anxiety. But when they take him for a run, they get him some exercise, he like just breathes and he's more relaxed. So a few more quick rapid fire lessons that I've learned in this last year. And one of the other big ones was have a team. Don't try to do this by yourself. Obviously, find a mentor if you can. I'm here for you. Obviously, you know what, for me to really be serious, you're gonna have to join the course, you're gonna have to give the deposit, but you know what, leave questions in the comments down below. In fact, actually, a quick favor I wanna ask you, leave a comment down below. What was the number one biggest lesson, or all the different biggest lessons you learned in this last year? I wanna learn from you. Obviously, I've been talking for a long time now. Leave a comment down below on what your biggest lesson was. But anyways, going back to what I was saying, working with a team has changed my life. When I first hired my first virtual assistant 4 years ago, that was like just shot me off the charts. But now I have 4 virtual assistants. I feel so much more, again, in a healthy way, so much more powerful. I always looked at all these entrepreneurs, YouTubers, and all these people that seem like they're doing so much. Like Gary Vaynerchuk's a good example. He seems like he gets so much done. How is he able to do it? It's because he doesn't do it all. He has a team. He has people that edits his videos. He has people that probably helps him with the different scripts. He does what he's good at. He's good at talking. He's good at holding a camera, walking around. But he has people that do all these different things. This is why if you're struggling to get a lot of stuff done, it's why you can't do it. It's because you're trying to do things that you're not good at. I'm not that great at video editing. So you know what I do? I have a team member that does it. And side note, I did go to the Philippines. I'll link the video up here and down below about when I went to the Philippines to meet my virtual assistant. That was really cool too. I met two of my virtual assistants. At the time I had 3, I've since hired another one. So don't try to do this by yourself, do it with a team. So you should have friends, you should have peers that are on the same level as you. You should have a mentor, someone that's ahead of you. Honestly, if you can find someone that's a step behind you, it depends where you are in your journey, that's also very powerful. That's another reason why I'm spending so much more time on my courses, so much more time on teaching, is because as I teach, I get better. I'm learning things from you. And that's why technically it's a deposit. And that's why if you complete the course, I'm willing to give you your money back, because I'm learning from you as much as you're learning from me. In making my course and having to systematize everything and try to like write it out step by step, I've learned what is my process, and I've learned how I can launch a product again. And this is why I say if all my accounts were closed, if everything went down to 0, I'd be fine, is because I have the knowledge on how to do this. I have the system. So get a mentor, get people on the same level as you. And honestly, if you are in Amazon, join the course. Like, one of the big things that I learned is that you should set a goal and burn your ships. Set a goal that's really big, something that scares you just a little bit. burn your ships and go full force. That's part of the reason I quit my job cold turkey, and I don't think everyone should do this, but part of the reason I quit my job cold turkey was I didn't want to be able to go back to anything. I didn't want to be doing it on the side, because if I was doing it on the side, I would never take it that seriously. So I burned my ships, I quit my job, and told myself I was never gonna make another resume again. I didn't burn my ships in the sense of, like, I didn't burn my bridges and I wasn't rude to them as I quit, but I kind of knew that I didn't want to have to ever use them as a reference again. So set a really big goal, and there's another video I'll link down below. There's a YouTube video where he talked about what's the difference between entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. And what he found is all entrepreneurs had this moment, I forget what he called it, it's like a threshold moment where they stepped into a land that they could not return. They stepped out of their comfort zone and they were never able to go back. Sound familiar? That's the freaking hero's journey. Every single entrepreneur has this moment. An example of this would be, I quit my job. That's my big example. And I couldn't go back and go grovel for my job. They wouldn't have given it back to me. Another example of this would be, maybe you spend $10,000 on inventory. In that moment, you're serious. I don't care what you think. As soon as you spend that money, there's no more going back. For me, I spent about over $10,000. I'll do a video about that soon again, so hit that subscribe button. I'll do a video soon about my threshold moment with performance nut butter. I've probably spent, for performance nut butter cacao, $12,000, $14,000 in making this product, and that there's no going back for me. I can't get that money back. I can't say, oh, sorry, I changed my mind. I no longer want to release this product. I've got no choice at this point but to release the product. And every successful entrepreneur, period, has this threshold moment. So this, again, I know some people don't understand why. Why do you charge a deposit? Why don't you just help out people for free? I want you to have this threshold moment. I want you to put that money down and know that, sure, you have 30 days to change your mind and I'll give you your deposit back. But after those 30 days, the only way you're gonna get your money back is by completing it. And if you complete my course, launch a product, I'll give you your money back. And I'm hoping that you found so much value from it that you say, yo, dude, keep the money. I don't care if you do. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this for testimonials. I'm doing this to learn from you. And I'm doing this because I really want to create a community. And that's going to be one of the biggest things I do in this next year. I want to start creating a movement. I want to create a movement of people that are not just trying to make money with drop shipping or private labeling or wholesale arbitrage, well, retail arbitrage, all these different like little trying to do it for the money. I want to do it because I want to make this movement of people that are creating products that they believe in, that they think's amazing, that they're trying to make a better world. And so if you have an idea of something where you want to make this world a little bit better, something that you really believe in, because I think to me, that's the future. As we are transitioning to this world of abundance, we don't need to do things just for the money. Let's do things that we're passionate about, that we love, and of course the money will follow. I firmly will argue to the death with anyone that when you're passionate about something, when you love something that you're doing, it's easier to make money from it because you understand the customer, because you understand like how to make a great product. And so this is, I think, the big thing. And again, part of the reason I'm making this video is for my future self, is I want to create this movement, and please help me create this movement. And some things, if you don't want to join the course, but you still want to help create this movement, is comment in the comments. Respond to people in the comments. I have a Facebook group. I'll link the Facebook group down below. And so if you join the course, you get access to my private Facebook group. But if you don't, I'm gonna make another Facebook group just for people like you that are passionate about this. Let's start a movement together. Let's start getting out of this scarcity mindset, getting into this world of abundance. Because again, if you never had to do anything for money again, what would you do? I'm willing to bet that you wouldn't just go lay on a beach somewhere. I'm willing to bet you wouldn't just eat oatmeal and watch YouTube videos all day long. You need some kind of a purpose. As a human, we need some kind of responsibility in this world. So join me on this quest, and let's create this community. Let's help other people create passion products. Let's help you create your own passion products. And if you haven't yet joined my Facebook group, join the Facebook group. Put a comment in the Facebook group letting me know that you joined because of this video. Leave your comment down below of all your top lessons. And that's it. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next video. And maybe most importantly, I didn't talk about, but remember to enjoy the journey. And that's a big lesson I learned, is it's not about just the end destination. You have to enjoy the entire journey. And of course, once you get to your final destination, enjoy that too. So make sure to enjoy the journey, and I'll see you in the next video.